What's happening, Bills Mafia? Ryan Thomas here for another special episode of the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. Thank you all for tuning in right here on the Buffalo Fanbase Podcast Network. Of course, Wednesdays at 8, each Wednesday at 8, you can expect this show. Today's show is one that will feature plenty of topics pertaining to, of course, your favorite football team and my favorite football team as well, the Buffalo Bills. Keon Coleman, the Buffalo Bills rookie wide receiver. How much pressure is Keon Coleman under heading into this highly anticipated rookie season? And what do I expect for Keon Coleman in his rookie season as well? Where are some changes from last season that we could see from this season that I think could make the Buffalo Bills a better team? You'll hear that right here on the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. The show starts now. Thank you so much for tuning to this episode of the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. As I mentioned, this show is brought to you on the Buffalo Fanbase Podcast Network, and it is sponsored by 26shirts.com. Very happy to see Del Reed post that 26 Shirts has continued to raise massive amounts of money over the years, reaching a $2 million mark. Congrats to Del Reed and the gang. I'm very much looking forward to big-time event for Bills Mafia to come and enjoy. That is the Bills Mafia Con, which is July 20th, and I will be there. I'm really looking forward to that, and I'm really looking forward to not only just the booths and everybody that'll be there, but meeting some new faces, seeing some familiar faces, and meeting some new faces. So with that being said, of course, my name is Ryan Thomas. I'm the host of the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. You can follow me on X and Instagram at Ryan Thomas Take. You see my handle in the bottom left corner of this podcast. And of course, as I always like to state, chime in and fire away some comments in the comment section below to chat with the host, this guy right here. You're looking right at him. And of course, the Thomas Take Sports Podcast is available live Wednesdays at 8 on the Buffalo Fanbase Podcast Network and all Thomas Take Sports Podcast platforms. Wherever you find your podcasts, of course, there are a lot of avenues for everybody to tune in to whatever they listen to. And I've been adding more content, just putting more notches in my belt, if you will, as far as content that I can put out for the Bills Mafia. And one of the places that I really love to go is the audio side of things, because I know when I listen to podcasts that I'm driving, either doing some errands or whatever, working out, whatever it may be, that you consume your podcast as well in a lot of different ways. I'd like to provide those options for people that are not on YouTube all the time, that don't have the time to watch a video, but they do have the time to listen. So of course, you can subscribe on my YouTube channel for the folks that love YouTube. Greatly love YouTube as well. And for the folks that love Facebook, I've been able to communicate with a lot of people on Facebook as well. So greatly appreciate each and every one of you that either like this video or subscribe to this podcast. Today, we have a lot to discuss. It is the off season. There are not many topics to discuss involving the Buffalo Bills, but I've consistently found a way. There's always something to talk about. I've consistently found a way, and I found a way to add more content on my Substack as well, ryanthamastake.substack.com. You can find my original articles on all things Buffalo sports, whether it's the Bills or the Sabres, or even fantasy sports as well. Plenty of fantasy football articles for the 2024 season will be out and released this month, August, July and August, I should say, mainly. So keep your eyes open on my socials. Of course, I love to interact with all of you and discuss fantasy sports, Bills football, Sabres hockey, of course. So with that, let's get into the first talking point of this podcast today. Keon Coleman, the Buffalo Bills rookie wide receiver. Now, I've talked about Keon Coleman quite often on this podcast, and I'm really excited that Keon Coleman is going to be involved heavily in the future, present and future, with the decisions that the Bills front office made to move on from not only Gabe Davis, but to move on from Stephon Diggs. It was apparent that the Bills would go in this direction as far as drafting a young rookie wideout. Look no further than Keon Coleman. But something that I found really interesting when I was gathering my notes for this show today and kind of debating whether or not Keon Coleman is under pressure his rookie season, Keon Coleman was asked specifically about that. And he went on to say that he is not Steph, he is not Gabe, he is Keon. And I wouldn't want a rookie wideout to quote unquote respond in any other form and fashion than that. I would want him to feel confident and secure in his personality as well as his game. And I think there are two facets to Keon Coleman that we've already recognized, one being his personality and the other being his game. And both facets are what Buffalo really needs right now. They need a player that can come in and be a little bit of a personality, have a little bit of a sense of humor, a little bit of lightheartedness in a game that is taken extremely serious. And I do want to say, for as seriously as this game is taken, you do need a little bit of parity in guys that are extremely strict with one another and guys that take things a little bit lightly and play a little bit loose to loosen things up. And I like the idea of the predecessor, Stephon Diggs, and his personality type, for all of his pluses in his game, for all the things that he did for Buffalo these last 4 years. He was the most successful Buffalo Bills wideout in 4 seasons, over a 4-season stretch. There were facets to his personality that are reasons as to why he's no longer a Buffalo Bill, whereas Keon Coleman is a complete contrast to that. So I'm very curious to see how that balancing act takes place for Keon, especially as a rookie, when you have the trials and tribulations, the ups and downs that rookie players experience. But I think the pressure is healthy. Yes, to answer the question, yes, he is under pressure. He's under pressure to perform, as is every player on this Buffalo Bills roster, to raise the bar from another early AFC divisional round exit to getting back to the AFC title game, winning that title game, and then going on to the Super Bowl. So Keon Coleman, yes, under pressure to deliver, but when you look at this roster, and for as much flack as this roster is going to get for not having the multitude of weapons in the eyes of some, I look at the Buffalo Bills wide receiver core and I say that there are more weapons, or just as many weapons now than ever. I think Josh Allen has a bevy of receivers to get the ball to, whether it's Keon Coleman, whether it's Curtis Samuel, whether it's Dalton Kincaid, whether it's Dawson Knox. There are plenty of options for Josh Allen to deliver the football to, as well as the running backs, which I will be talking about in this podcast as well. But Keon Coleman is not under pressure to perform like a wide receiver one. He's under pressure to just compete and perform and be a part of the mix. I don't think the Bills are expecting 1,400 yards and 13 touchdowns out of a rookie. Granted, if he does that, then you're in really good shape. But if he doesn't, if Keon ends up with 900 to 1,000, 1,100 yards and 5 or 6 touchdowns, that's a really good rookie season. It's really hard for rookie wide receivers to break in as opposed to rookie running backs. Rookie running backs have had just as much success, if not more success, than rookie wideouts. Granted, there have been some rookie wideouts that have really blown up, but for the most part, somebody that is drafted in the top 10 can really only look at that as a legitimate claim. Somebody that's drafted in the top 30, like Keon Coleman, or in the top 32, like Keon Coleman was, or 33 rather, you're not expected to just come in and blow the floodgates open. You know what I mean? So I'm expecting Keon Coleman to perform and to produce. Don't get me wrong, but he doesn't need to be what Stephon Diggs was. And dare I say it, I don't think Josh Allen would want another receiver to come in and feel like he's got to get the lion's share of the carries when Josh Allen's got Dalton Kincaid, Josh Allen's got Dawson Knox, Mac Hollins, throw him in that mix too, as well as Curtis Samuel, who I only expect to do really big things, and company, right? So go on and on about the name players that are at the wide receiver position that I really like for the Buffalo Bills that I think are rated as of right now far too low in comparison to what they really are. Talent-wise, I think there's a lot more interchangeable pieces at the wide receiver position than what there was previously with Diggs and Davis. With Diggs and Davis, I think it was a situation where you knew what you were getting. Stephon Diggs was not going to take the top off of a defense. Gabe Davis was not going to do that either in terms of speed. Maybe in terms of route running, Gabe Davis had a funky route that he'd run and get open, and that's why you saw some big-time touchdowns. But you also saw some big-time drops from Gabe Davis and Stephon Diggs showing signs that maybe not only was he not a fit in Joe Brady's offense, but maybe he was getting a little bit older. And that's why we saw that second half regression in the last season statistics that we saw. And I know a lot of fantasy owners out there, especially in Buffalo, that drafted Stephon Diggs thinking that he was going to be what he always was for Buffalo. And he really was not that last season in total. So that kind of goes hand in hand with the next topic of discussion. Where can the Bills be better in 2024 2025 compared to last season, the 2023-2024 season, of course? And the first thing that I think of, that I look at, is the coaching staff. And I've always held the belief that football is the most coach-savvy game that there is. You're only going to go as far as your coach. Your coach can win you games, just as worse, he could lose you games as well. And the coaching staff, that goes to the head coaching ability, but the coaching staff is extremely important. And Sean McDermott had Brian Daboll, Leslie Frazier for quite some time. Well known now that Daboll is the head coach of the New York Giants. Leslie Frazier, I think he's working with the Seattle Seahawks now after taking a year off. So Sean McDermott's coaching staff, I feel, is back to a place of stability, because Sean McDermott was calling the defensive plays last year. Ken Dorsey was brought in promoted from within, rather, to take Brian Daboll's spot when Daboll left for the Giants. And for a season and a half, it just didn't work. We could debate all day long why that was. I just think Ken Dorsey ultimately was not ready for that job, for that responsibility to work for and with those players. And Joe Brady was, because he was a former offensive coordinator, whereas Ken Dorsey had never held an OC, offensive coordinator, position prior to Buffalo promoting him from the quarterback coach to the OC. And that was Josh Allen's call. So a lot of that had to do with Josh Allen's decision-making. Ultimately, it was Sean McDermott's decision, but a lot of it had to do with Buffalo feeling like, okay, our quarterback wants us to go in this direction. Maybe we should. And now the coaching staff, as I've mentioned, is in a more stable place. I feel way more comfortable with the way things are. Case in point, I mentioned him, Joe Brady, brought up from the quarterback position to the OC position as he was hired as the next quarterback's coach to work under Ken Dorsey. Once Ken Dorsey was fired, Joe Brady was then entrusted to be the guy, entrusted to be the OC. So Joe Brady now extended, Joe Brady coming back, Joe Brady for a full season. I'm looking at things 1 year at a time, and Joe Brady back for one season that is ahead of us in its entirety, as opposed to coming in, week 6 or week 8 like he did last year, That's exciting. That means to me that a lot of the additions that have been made under the guys that they can work under Joe Brady, that these guys can do what they need them to do in terms of working under Joe Brady. Guys like Coleman, guys like Samuel. And of course, the run game is going to be different. I'm going to talk about that next, but I want to go to the other side of the ball first. And go to Bobby Babich as well, and a new energy on defense. Now, in my last article that I wrote on my Substack, wrote about the top 5 offseason decisions by the Buffalo Bills. And at number 5, to provide you a little bit of a preview to the article, you can check it out at ryanthomasTake.substack.com. And I'll put that on the visual side of things for you guys once again. The 5th, rated decision that the Buffalo Bills made, in my opinion, was the decision to hire Bobby Babich, promote Bobby Babich to the defensive coordinator spot. And to me, the reason why I find that such a huge deal is because, case in point, I should say, the reason why I find this to be such a big deal is because of the fact that Sean McDermott, I thought he did a great job last year. I thought he was phenomenal with the defense, despite the injuries, especially that the defense faced. Buffalo's defense was really good practically all season long. There wasn't really a week that I can think of off the top of my head where their defense looked mediocre. And I thought that spoke to McDermott's ability to call plays defensively, getting that role back, as he was a former defensive coordinator himself. But I think it takes a lot of nobility and a lot of recognition, self-awareness, to maybe say humility as well, for a head coach to kind of take this step back and say, you know what, I did this really well. I could do this job in my sleep, but I'm the head coach. I'm not the head coach D coordinator. I'm the head coach. And I need somebody in there that I can trust. I need somebody in there that is going to run things similarly to myself, but somebody that's going to run things with a little bit of a new energy, a little bit of a new wrinkle, a little bit of a new flair. And Bobby Babich is in his early 40s as a position coach, rather, in the National Football League. He's a very young coach, and he's grown up from within a coaching family. His dad was a coach for the Bills as a position coach for quite some time in his own right. So linebackers coach, I believe. So Bobby Babich is given a massive opportunity, and it will be a test because this defense has undergone so many changes, especially in leadership, with guys like Poyer going, with guys like Micah Hyde not being there, and plenty of new pieces as well. Dwayne Carter on the defensive line. Of course, the return of Terrell Bernard is going to be big for this defense. The return of Matt Milano is going to be even bigger, but virtually a brand new secondary. And that's the main positional unit that I can highlight and say Bobby Babich has his work cut out for him, yes, but he is relishing the challenge. And I'm really excited to see what he brings. I think he can bring a new element to this defense that Sean McDermott lacked because he had to manage so many different things, and definitely something that Leslie Frazier lacked, which was why they decided to go in the direction that they did to move on from him. So, and reverting back to McDermott as a D coordinator last season. So Bobby Babich, a new energy on defense. I think that's going to make a big difference to the Buffalo Bills in 2024, 2025. Now, I mentioned this earlier, moments ago, the balanced passing attack in terms of, not having necessarily a wide receiver one, so to speak, that, you look at what Stephon Diggs, how he was as a player. Was he an alpha dog? Yes, he was. Was he an all-out stud as a wide receiver one? Yes, he was. Did Stephon Diggs, dare I say, even earn the right to push the envelope the way that he did as a all-pro player? I think a case could be made that he did deserve to have the thought process that I need to get the ball, because when the ball's in my hands, we win games. He proved that. He proved that in Minnesota. He proved that in Buffalo. He's a real deal superstar wideout. And while I say that, I definitely think it forced the hand of Josh Allen to throw the football out of his right hand into the arms of Stephon Diggs, or hands of Stephon Diggs, I should say, a little bit too much. And they started to become a little bit one-dimensional in terms of the passing attack. It felt like a lot of times the first and only guy Allen looked at was Stephon Diggs, whereas now you have a bevy of decent options at the pass catching positions of wide receiver, tight end, as well as running back. And I'm really excited to see how that shakes out. If I were to kind of predict statistics, which I will do next week, but I will have a very hard time putting together which pass catcher will have the most yards, which pass catcher might have the most touchdowns. It could be two completely different answers to that question. So that means balance. And now I mentioned a younger, more athletic group in the run game. Touched on it twice already, but James Cook is the alpha back of this team. He's earned that right. James Cook, in his own right, was what helped Buffalo win games that were not even close. And I look at that Dallas Cowboys game where Buffalo rode James Cook all night long. Dallas could not stop him. And I think that just goes to show you the potential that we haven't even seen the ceiling get met from James Cook quite yet. But when we do, it's going to be something that I think Bills fans will really appreciate, the fact they even had to wait as long as they did to see it, because Buffalo has not had a dynamic runner since the days of LaShawn McCoy, which that was quite a few years ago. It's been a bit since Buffalo had consistent production out of the running back position. A lot of that has to do with the rise of Josh Allen. A lot of that has to do with the fact that the league is more of a passing league. But I do believe that the Bills have geared their team this offseason, especially with the additions on the offensive line, with Cedric Van Pran-Granger, with the shifting and moving and shaking of guys like Osiris Torrance at right guard, drafted Spencer Brown at right tackle. Realistically, I think that they have garnered the attention of being more of a run-blocking offensive line heading into this year than in previous years with some of the additions that they've made. So it's a really exciting talking point to kind of just go over what ways do I think the Bills can potentially be better. And we are only a couple weeks away from Buffalo Bills training camp, and we're only 60 days away from the Buffalo Bills playing games. So this is we're getting close. And me in my position, hosting this podcast for as long as I have, I want to bring in season the best guests possible. That's what I'm going to try to do this season. Last season, I was kind of hit or miss. Some weeks I could get a guest, some weeks I couldn't. 2 years ago, I had a different guest on every single week. And that was on Wednesday nights, just like this show has always been on Wednesday nights. But my post-game shows, my pre-game shows on Sunday mornings, I'd get a guest either for post-game or for pre-game. I'd love to try to do that again. And not that I'd love to try, I am going to accomplish being able to do that again. So really looking forward to what this season has to bring. I've greatly appreciated being a part of the Buffalo fan base. Going to be, all over, bouncing around all over different shows in the coming months. But of course, I'd love for you guys to keep things circling back to the Thomas Take Sports podcast. I got a lot of great content. I'm really catering to the sports consumer, whether it be a fantasy sports perspective or that you're looking for, or Buffalo Bills content like this, or Buffalo Sabres. There is so much to talk about, and I love to talk about it. So greatly appreciate you guys tuning in tonight. Of course, I'll be back next Wednesday at 8 next week. And, of course, tune in. I'd love to see you guys back. Of course, That was the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. I'm Ryan Thomas. Go Bills, and I'll see you next week.